There is a kind of quiet cruelty in how time moves when your heart refuses to bargain. You watch others glide into declarations while you move through rooms like a careful diver, sensing currents most people ignore. The ache is real, and so is the fear that your standards might be a curse. Yet what if the delay is not neglect but training? What if the silence is a kiln? Rare souls are not being punished. They are being tempered for a different kind of fire. The moment you see it, the story changes from deprivation to refinement, from waiting to preparation. I will speak to you directly because this is personal. You are not hard to love. You are hard to fool. There is a difference. Your nervous system recognizes when connection expands you and when it merely fills space. And that discernment makes ordinary comfort feel dishonest. Still, loneliness bites. You wonder whether tenderness is passing you by while you insist on truth. You ask if the universe actually rewards integrity or only speed. Here is the promise. There is a map through this, and it explains why time has been doing what it is doing with you. It is not random. It follows an inner architecture that wants you capable of meeting love without shrinking, performing, or losing your center. Jung gave language for that architecture. He saw how the psyche resists imitation and seeks wholeness, and how unexamined images inside us get projected onto the faces we meet. He called the lifelong work individuation, becoming an integrated self rather than a collage of other people's expectations. Seen through that lens, the delay is not empty time. It is apprenticeship. Your perception is cleaned, your boundaries are tuned, and your regard for your own truth becomes steady enough to hold another without dissolving. Patience here is not passivity, it is craft. Each season teaches you to separate signal from noise, essence from costume, intimacy from intensity. This conversation will not sell shortcuts. It will give you 5 initiations that tend to appear in some order before the right person arrives. Each has a feel, a lesson, a trap, and a sign that you have outgrown it. Together they move you from ache to orientation. You will learn how to tell projection from presence, fear from wisdom, and chemistry from compatibility. You will see why the relationships that almost fit were necessary teachers, and how the right bond registers less like fireworks and more like relief. The goal is not to make you less discerning, but to make your discernment kinder and more accurate. So no, you are not behind. You are being fitted. The gap between what you want and what you meet is not an indictment. It is a signal that your life is preparing you to recognize what would otherwise be missed. If you accept the training, impatience softens into purpose. You will stop measuring worth by timelines and start listening for resonance. And when the right person appears, you will not need to overrule yourself, rationalize red flags, or negotiate away what matters. The recognition will be quiet, steady, and unmistakable. 2 whole people choosing with no bargain against the self. That is the promise and the destination. Let us begin. As you listen, notice the parts of your story that stir, ache, or breathe easier. That felt sense is guidance. Keep it with you as a private compass while we walk. The teachings are simple, but they ask for honesty. Give them that, and they will give you back yourself. For now, enough guidance. You need a compass before you need a companion, and the most reliable one points inward. Individuation is that compass, the slow, sometimes inconvenient work of becoming one coherent person instead of a pleasing patchwork. Before you choose, you notice who is choosing. Before you ask for devotion, you gather the pieces that would otherwise hand your life to the nearest storyline. Individuation is not isolation. It is intimacy with what is true in you, so that intimacy with another is not camouflage for self-abandonment. Start with the shadow. These are the parts of you you learn to hide. Anger that protected tenderness, need that once went unmet, brilliance that drew criticism, softness that was mislabeled weakness. When the shadow is disowned, it goes looking for actors to carry it. You fall in love with someone's certainty because you have exiled your own. You chase intensity because you have locked away aliveness. Owning the shadow does not mean indulging it. It means noticing where your attractions are trying to restore balance. You could claim directly. Relationship then becomes a site of truth rather than a recycling plant for old roles. Next, the inner beloved. Jung noticed that we each carry an unconscious image of the opposite qualities we long to integrate. Those qualities get projected onto the first person who seems to glimmer with them, and suddenly the ordinary becomes oracular. This is the enchantment of projection. It is not evil. It is incomplete. You need the image to wake what sleeps in you. But if you mistake the image for the person, you will edit reality to preserve a dream. To mature is to thank the dream for what it revealed, and then let your eyes adjust to who is actually standing in front of you. Now, the persona and the self. The persona is the mask you learned to wear so the world would greet you with less friction. We need some mask. The trouble begins when the mask believes it is you. The self is the organizing center that holds contradictions without collapsing. Tender and fierce, playful and serious, independent and receptive. When the self leads, you can say yes without disappearing and no without cruelty. You can bear the ordinary days of love because you are not depending on performance to feel real. Why does all this matter for finding the right person? Because recognition requires receptors. If projection runs the show, you will confuse resemblance with reality. If the shadow rules, you will choose the partner who keeps old pain familiar. If persona drives, you will shop for status and call it devotion. But when individuation is underway, your receptors change. You feel drawn to steadiness rather than spectacle, to curiosity rather than conquest, to accountability rather than apology theater. You begin to sense differences between spark and signal, chemistry and compatibility, hunger and readiness. This compass also sets the rhythm of the 5 initiations. The solitude you feared becomes the workshop where you retrieve exiled parts. The enchanted attraction that once swallowed you becomes a mirror you can read without drowning. The impulse to sabotage softens because you are no longer protecting a fragile costume. The recalibrations that used to feel like loss reveal themselves as alignment, and surrender stops feeling like defeat when you notice you are not empty. You are available. Individuation does not promise a fairy tale. It offers something steadier, a self that can love without bargaining against its own wholeness. You may still feel longing. You may still feel fear, but the fear is honest and the longing is spacious. You will recognize yourself in the way you choose, and the choosing will attract someone whose work is similarly real. 2 compasses, 2 centers, meeting where neither has to become smaller to be held. From there, partnership becomes an extension of integrity, not a rescue mission, and desire turns generous for you both. First comes the loneliness that does not ask your permission. It is not the chosen quiet of an artist's morning. It is a hollow after a crowded evening, the sense that conversations skimmed the surface while something in you kept reaching down. You watch 2 people dissolve into each other across a table and wonder whether your own depth is a disadvantage, whether the very sensitivity that lets you feel beauty is what keeps you apart from it. Nothing is wrong with you. Something is right with you and it has not found a match. Solitude becomes sacred the moment you decide it is a workshop rather than a penalty box. You begin to ask different questions. What do I want that I am ashamed to want? What do I tolerate because it keeps me near a body, even when my soul is starving? In that lab, you rebuild small rituals, meals that honor your pace, movement that wakes your animal body, conversations that do not require you to costume your honesty. The trap here is speed. You may lower your standard to relax the ache, and the relief is short. The graduation is quieter. You notice that you are not bargaining with yourself to stay in rooms that drain you. You can leave kindly. You can stay without clinging, and then a door opens you did not force open. Into that steadier room walks someone who seems to be written in your private language. The timing feels cinematic. They say a phrase you once wrote in a journal and never spoke aloud. You feel seen, not because they studied you, but because they mirrored you effortlessly. This is the enchantment that grows from the inner image of qualities you wish to live. Fierceness made gentle, steadiness made alive, playfulness made responsible. The psyche uses this image to wake you. You may believe destiny has finally kept its appointment, yet projection is not villainy. It is a spell that needs your cooperation. The task is to keep your eyes soft but open. Ask, what do I know from the body's day-to-day, not from the dream's hunger? Does this person reveal more of me, or reward the costume I built to be chosen? Do they stay consistent when no audience is watching? The trap is editing yourself to preserve the magic, compressing your complexity, so the illusion never cracks. Graduation feels like an exhale you did not perform. You can let reality be specific, and the connection either deepens into tenderness or resolves into gratitude for what it awakened. The spell breaks without bitterness, because you claimed the qualities in yourself the dream had borrowed. Then when someone genuinely appropriate approaches, defenses you thought you had retired begin to patrol the gates. You find reasons to hesitate that feel like wisdom, but taste like fear. You compare them to a fantasy polished by years of solitude and announce the living person is lacking. You preempt disappointment by calling it discernment, or you test them subtly at first, then with sharper edges, arriving late to see if they will chase, withdrawing affection to see if they will plead. You are not malicious, you are terrified. Chaos was once how you measured importance, so steadiness reads as disinterest. This is the gate of self-sabotage, where the nervous system tries to protect you from what it wants most. The lesson is to discern between the body's alarm and the heart's warning. Alarm is loud and repetitive. Warning is specific and calm. One asks for regulation, the other asks for a boundary. The trap is perfectionism disguised as high standards. Perfectionism makes you a critic of life instead of a participant in it. Graduation looks like letting kindness be persuasive. You allow consistency to accumulate evidence. You take your time without manufacturing distance. You state a need without turning it into a test. And as you do, you watch your nervous system. Learn a new rhythm, one where goodness is allowed to register as exciting. After that, recalibration arrives. What once fit no longer fits, not because it was false, but because you are larger than the container you have been living in. Friends who loved your wounded nobility feel startled when you speak from healed authority. Spaces built around shared complaints become heavy in your mouth. Habit asks you to stay. Alignment asks you to bless and go. This is not the ruthless purge of a trend. It is careful stewardship of your future. You begin to shape your days around the values you claim at night. You decline drama not because you are above it, but because you are for something else. You spend more time where you do not have to explain the basic dignity of your longings. The trap is mistaking familiarity for fate. Your brain loves the known, even when the known is small. So you may interpret expansion as betrayal and shrink to fit the room that will applaud you for staying predictable. Graduation is the felt sense that your kindness includes you. You can honor history without being held hostage by it. You express gratitude and move forward. You let friendships molt without demanding that anyone be the villain. You hold solitude without narrating it as punishment. And life begins to respond to the new signal you are sending by making certain invitations impossible to miss. Finally, surrender arrives wearing ordinary clothes. You stop scanning every crowd, stop reading omens into casual glances, stop asking every conversation to prove a future. Desire remains, but grasping dissolves. You begin to live the day you are in. Work regains its texture. Your body feels like a home again. You keep the door unlocked, but you do not stand in the doorway. This is not apathy. It is availability. You have become a person who can be found because you are not disguised by seeking. The trap is performative detachment, declaring you do not care as a strategy to trick time. Another trap is spiritual bypassing, using lofty language to avoid the real ache of longing. True surrender feels like a soft strength. If love comes, you will receive it. If it tarries, you will keep building a life that fits you. The graduation is the paradox itself. Only when you no longer need love to complete you does love arrive ready to collaborate, not rescue. Across these initiations, you are learning a different literacy. You are learning to read your sensations without being ruled by them, to weigh words by behavior, to let quiet be evidence of stability rather than absence of spark. You are learning the limits of intensity and the value of repair, the way curiosity can hold a disagreement, the way accountability restores dignity after harm. You notice how your standard is less about pedigree and more about practice. Do they listen when it is inconvenient? Do they take responsibility without a performance? Do you like yourself more in their company? Not excited in the adrenal sense, expanded in the human sense. Practical life reflects the inner passage. You find yourself designing your home for companionship even before a partner arrives. One extra chair by the window, 2 mugs you actually like, a calendar with space for conversation that is not squeezed between emergencies. You practice telling the truth early, not as a dare but as a way to save everyone's time. You take care of your future self by tending to sleep, money, and friendships, because love is steadier when your life has room for it. You stop treating romance like an exemption from skill and start treating it like a craft that requires humility. And then the world behaves differently. People who once overlooked you now find themselves lingering, not because you became louder, but because you became clearer. Opportunities that used to arrive as almost become yeses you can carry. You notice fewer spikes and more through lines. You feel less like you are chasing a signal and more like you are broadcasting one. This is not metaphysical vanity. It is the natural consequence of coherence. Like recognizes like. When you participate in that law without forcing it, life feels less like a test you can fail and more like an ecosystem you can tend. None of this makes you invulnerable. You will still miss a cue. You will still feel the odd ache on a Sunday afternoon, You will still be tempted by the brilliance of a mirror, but you recover faster. You ask better questions sooner. You apologize without self-erasure and forgive without losing your spine. You do not turn departures into proof that you are too much or too little. You let convergence take the time it needs because you are no longer measuring your worth by how quickly it arrives. If you are somewhere inside this terrain now, take one honest inventory. Name one place you are lowering your standard out of fatigue and raise it gently. Name one place you are testing instead of asking, and speak plainly. Name one place you are clinging to the known and choose the aligned discomfort. Name one small thing you can surrender, not because you are giving up, but because you are ready to be found living. These acts sound simple. They are revolutionary because they are repeatable. Repetition changes identity, and identity, more than intention, is what shapes the partners we can recognize and the partnerships we can keep. When the right person enters this field, the difference will be unmistakable. They will not rescue you from the work you have done. They will recognize it as the way you learn to meet them. They will not confuse your standards with snobbery. They will thank your standards for protecting the space where intimacy can grow. They will not worship you or tolerate you. They will relate to you. They will bring their own craft, their own inventory, their own history of turning toward truth. And the conversation that follows will not require spectacle. It will require presence. You will both know the cost of honesty and pay it gladly, because the returns are peace, play, and a widening field of possibility neither of you could have built alone. You may wonder how to trust this arc when memory is crowded with counterexamples, when people who promised depth delivered only performance. Trust here is not blind faith, it is behavioral math. Notice patterns over proclamations. A person's capacity for intimacy shows up in how they repair after missteps, in how they hold your no, in how they metabolize feedback that touches their pride. Do they become smaller and punish you with silence, or do they steady themselves and return with clarity? Do they pursue proximity only when you sparkle, or also when you are unglamorous and imperfect? Do they hunger for your adoration, or do they protect your dignity even when no one is watching? These are not tests for scoring. They are windows for seeing. And you deserve to see. Equally, look at yourself with the same unsentimental kindness. When anxiety surges, do you reach for control or for regulation? When jealousy visits, do you attack? Or do you ask what boundary is needed to feel safe enough to stay generous? When boredom appears, do you chase novelty, or do you bring curiosity to the life you already have? The right person cannot save you from the choices only you can make on your side of the bridge. But the right person will make those choices feel worthwhile because the investment actually lands. You will feel your efforts turning into a deeper ease rather than into a heavier performance. If you listen closely, you will hear how these initiations are not gates you pass once, but practices you return to. Solitude will still call you to recalibrate when your life grows noisy. Projection will still try on a new costume when you are tired. Self-protection will still whisper through perfectionism when intimacy asks for exposure. Alignment will still require you to bless what no longer fits. And surrender will always be the way you keep from turning love into a project. This is not discouraging, it is dignifying. It means you are human, and being human is a craft. Craftspeople do not graduate, they evolve. They keep their hands on the material and their hearts in the work. And that, more than any talisman or trick, is what allows rare souls to meet in the open and stay. It does not begin with spectacle. It begins with a body that relaxes. You are not scanning. You are present. You notice how conversation has air in it, how listening is not an audition, how pauses are not punishments but places to breathe. They are interested the way gardeners are interested, attentive without prying, patient without apathy, attuned without possession. The days acquire a texture you can trust. You are not flooded and drained. You are filled. You recognize the difference between charm and character when plans change. Charm pleads. Character adjusts and keeps you in the loop. Charm gives excuses. Character gives context and repair. Character is not austere. It is warm and specific. They remember small things without performing effort. Desire grows without bargaining, because wanting them does not require leaving yourself. You retain your friendships, your rituals, your voice. They do not fear your boundaries. They thank them for revealing how to love you. Green flags are ordinary and luminous. Consistency that does not demand applause. Curiosity about your shadow, not as a puzzle to solve but as a landscape to respect. Accountability that arrives before defense. Affection that feels like offering, not leverage. Joy that includes rest. Responsiveness that does not require theater. Commitment that sounds like planning dinners and budgets as much as celebrating milestones. You like yourself in their presence. Your humor is quicker, your kindness steadier, your courage nearer to the surface. This recognition is peaceful because your receptors are calibrated. Intensity had become your proof. Now ease is evidence. You still feel spark, but it rides on a current of safety. The center of your life remains your own integrity, and they meet you there as an equal center. Two compasses, two freedoms, one field wide enough for both to keep growing. Take stock gently and precisely. Name the initiation you are in, not to dramatize it, but to orient. Raise one standard you lowered out of fatigue. Ask for one need without turning it into a test. Release one habit that keeps you smaller than your truth. Let your life feel like a welcome before anyone arrives. If this spoke to you, add one sentence to the world that helps another rare soul feel less alone. Share the lesson you paid for with courage, so someone else can spend theirs on growth. Tell us what changed when you treated solitude as a workshop, when you let a projection dissolve, when you refused to punish steadiness for not being dramatic. Your words might be the lamp you wanted once, and then return to your day with that strength. You are not waiting. You are training. When love knocks, you will already be home.